In the last video, talked about the various elements one uses to create a model: stocks, which are quantities of things, and variables, which are constants or computations of things, flows used to move things between stocks, and links used to communicate values from one place to another. In this video, we're going to begin, we talked about it in a very generalized sense, just talking about stuff. In this particular video, we're going to get a little bit more specific in that we're going to talk about a bathtub, and we want to go ahead and make this look like a bathtub. So we'll go ahead and search for an image, and I guess this one will do. We'll open this in a new tab, find out where this image really, not a good one. Let's try this one. Open a new tab, and then copy the image URL and go back and put it right here. And we'll tell it that we want the label at the bottom so that we can actually see it. And we'll resize this a little bit. So we're actually talking about a bathtub. Holds water so you can take a bath. And we'll start out and we'll say that this bathtub has got 10 gallons of water in it. Now within Insight Maker, you can go ahead and specify units. Units are very useful to help you ensure that you're not mixing things up in a model, so you're not multiplying apples and oranges and getting some nonsensical kind of stuff. So and you'll see as we progress the kinds of things that happen if your units don't come out appropriately. So being that a stock is a quantity of stuff, in this case it's gallons of water, we can then go ahead and use a flow for the faucet, I mean for the drain. We'll call it a drain, and say how water gets out of the tub, and we'll tell it that it's 1 gallon per minute. Gallons per minute. Okay. We'll now go ahead and check the time settings and say from 0 to 10, and we're working in terms of minutes, and we'll leave the time step at 1 minute. We'll talk at some later time about when and why you make the time step something other than 1. So if we now take this particular model and tell it to run it, we have a graph that shows us that we started with the bathtub at time 0 that had 10 gallons in it, and the flow took out 1 gallon every minute. So at the end of 10 minutes, the tub is empty. Now, if there's 10 gallons of water in the tub, it must have gotten there somehow. So let's go ahead and create another flow, which we can actually use to put water in the tub. Now, because of the nature of doing this in a web environment, the flow you have to start with the flow and connect to the tub and drag outward, and then go ahead and tell it to reverse it. So now we have a flow that's going into the tub. We'll call this the faucet. Water flowing into the tub. When you do a flow that goes from a stock to nowhere, it simply means that in the context of this particular model, you don't care where it goes. There will be models where you do care where the water goes, but for this particular one, you open the drain and the water goes down the drain, and you don't care where it went. And you open the faucet and the water comes from someplace, but you really don't pay attention where that is, and you just know that it fills the tub. So let's take the drain and say that, okay, the drain is now closed. Should use a 0. And the faucet fills at a rate of 2. Now let me go ahead and save this and just call it tub example. I'll do the rest of that later. So let's just have a tub example. And I'll run this, and what happens is that it now tells me that it went from 0 to 30 gallons in 10 minutes because the flow rate is 2. But how can that be? Because if it only went, because there was already 10 gallons in the tub. So it started at 10, and I added another 20 gallons over 10 minutes. So, though also I forgot to set this to gallons per minute, which I should do. And let me go ahead and tell it that the tub is empty. So the question is, as I think about the bathtub, what else is it here that makes sense for me to work with? Now, usually when I want to take a bath, I need to fill the bathtub to a certain level, so there's some definition of what it means for the tub to be full. So let me use a variable to say full level, and that is defines a full bathtub. Okay, and we'll say that that's 50. So 50 gallons of water is meant to indicate that the bathtub is full. So let me go ahead and say that this is also in gallons. Now to control the faucet so that it turns off when the tub is full, we need to compare this to what's in the tub and decide whether the faucet stays open or whether it's closed. So let's take another variable, and we'll use this, and we'll define it to be what we'll call gap. And the gap is simply the difference between what represents full and what's already in the bathtub. So we need to communicate these values to this variable. For when we use a link to do that, simply to connect them. And the only thing that a link is doing is it's communicating a value from one point to another. No amount of stuff actually moves as a result of a link. And then I can use this little equal sign to get here and say that, okay, the equation for the gap is the full level minus the amount that's in the bathtub at the moment. So that tells me how much water is needed to make the tub full. Okay? And then we need a link to go from here to the faucet, because it's the gap that actually controls the faucet. So if I click on this, the flow rate is no longer 2. The flow rate is actually the value of the gap. So the difference between the tub and the full level creates a gap, and the gap controls the faucet. And when the faucet's open, the water flows into the tub, and when it's full, then it turns off and it's closed. So we'll now go ahead and also notice that every time I make a change, Insight Maker is saving those changes so that it's already saved for me. So if I run this model, then it's going to tell me that there's an error. And the error is because there's an inconsistency in the units. This is gallons, this is gallons, this is gallons, this is gallons per minute. So how do you get from gallons to gallons per minute? What you actually have to do in this case is create a variable called time and tell it that this is a conversion variable, and it has a value of 1, and it has a units of minutes. Minutes. Okay. use a link to connect minutes to the faucet, and we'll change the formula to say that it's gap divided by time, so that because this is gallons divided by minutes, it ends up being gallons per minute, and the variables are consistent. So now when I run the model, it tells me that I start with an empty bathtub at time 0, and at time 1 the bathtub is full. Now I don't know about you, but I don't have a faucet in my bathtub that causes the faucet to fill at 50 gallons per minute. So obviously there's something about this model that needs to be elaborated in a bit more detail, and we'll take that up in the next video.